The economy of Ukraine is an emerging free market economy with a high level of corruption. It grew rapidly from 2000 until 2008 when the Great Recession began worldwide and reached Ukraine as the 2008-2009 Ukrainian financial crisis. The economy recovered in 2010 and continued improving until 2013. From 2014 to 2015, the Ukrainian economy suffered a downturn, with GDP in 2015 being slightly above half of its value in 2013. In 2016, the economy again started to grow. By 2018, the Ukrainian economy was growing rapidly and reached almost 80% of its size in 2008. The depression during the 1990s included hyperinflation and a fall in economic output to less than half of the GDP of the preceding Ukrainian SSR. GDP growth was recorded for the first time in 2000 and continued for 8 years. This growth was halted by the global financial crisis of 2008. But the Ukrainian economy recovered and achieved positive GDP growth in the first quarter of 2010. By October 2013, the Ukrainian economy lapsed into another recession. The previous summer, Ukrainian exports to Russia substantially declined due to stricter border and customs control by Russia. The early 2014 annexation of Crimea by Russia and the war in Donbass that started in the spring of 2014 severely damaged Ukraine's economy and severely damaged two of the country's most industrial regions. In 2013, Ukraine saw zero GDP growth. Ukraine's economy shrank by 6.8% in 2014, and this continued with a 12% decline in GDP in 2015. In April 2017, the World Bank stated that Ukraine's economic growth rate was 2.3% in 2016, thus ending the recession. In April 2020, the World Bank reported that economic growth was solid at 3.2% in 2019, led by a good agricultural harvest and sectors dependent on domestic consumption. Household consumption grew by 11.9% in 2019, supported by sizable remittance inflows and a resumption of consumer lending, while domestic trade and agriculture grew by 3.4% and 1.3%, respectively. However, in 2020 GDP collapsed by 4.4% due to coronavirus pandemic. The nation has many of the components of a major European economy. Rich farmlands, a well-developed industrial base, highly trained labor, and a good education system. As of 2014, however, the economy remains in a poor condition. According to IMF, in 2018 Ukraine was a country with the lowest GDP per capita in Europe. Geography has long influenced the economy of the Ukrainian lands. Rich fertile soils made the area a breadbasket for ancient Greece as well as for early modern Europe. The maintenance of trade corridors, the route from the Varangians to the Greeks and access through the straits to the Mediterranean world, became important. Mineral resources encouraged industrialization, notably in the Donbas, from the 19th century onwards. But the lack of secure borders meant repeated interruptions in economic development. Steppe nomads and other conquerors, Cumans, Mongols, Tartars for example, sometimes saw plundering as more important than fostering economic development. In the 16th to 18th centuries, the wastelands of the wild fields left much of Ukraine as an area of tentatively militarized outposts prior to Tsarist Russia's extension of its power into the region in the 17th and 18th centuries. On the 24th of August 1991, Ukraine established its independence from the Soviet Union. The new state's economy suffered huge output declines and soaring inflation in the following years. Ukraine saw hyperinflation in the early 1990s because of a lack of access to financial markets and massive monetary expansion to finance government spending. While output declined sharply, huge output declines and soaring inflation was at the time common to most former Soviet republics. But Ukraine was among the hardest hit by these problems. In response to this hyperinflation, the National Bank of Ukraine replaced the national currency, the karbovanets, with the hryvnia in September 1996 and pledged to keep it stable in relation to the US dollar. The currency remained unstable through the late 1990s, particularly during the 1998 Russian financial crisis. Deep recession during the 1990s led to a relatively high poverty rate. But beginning in 2001, as a result 7 straight years of economic growth, the standard of living for most citizens increased. A World Bank report of 2007 noted, Ukraine recorded one of the sharpest declines in poverty of any transition economy in recent years. The poverty rate, measured against an absolute poverty line, fell from a high of 32% in 2001 to 8% in 2005. The UN noted that Ukraine had overcome absolute poverty, and that there was only relative poverty in 2009. Ukraine stabilized by the early 2000s. The year 2000 saw the first year of economic growth since Ukraine's independence. The economy continued to grow thanks to 50% growth of exports between 2000 and 2008, mainly exports from the traditional industries of metals, metallurgy, engineering, chemicals, and food.